we'll focus in on that game a little bit as well. Biggest win of the weekend, biggest or most surprising win. NC State beat Clemson. Clemson has 2 losses. Paul, they're ranked in the top 25.
They're 25th in the coaches, and they are 19th in the AP, and it's bull crap on both of them. They should not be ranked. They're only ranked because of what they've done in the past. And you'll hear this in the top 5. We in college football need to start living in the gosh darn now. And I know I sound angry about it, but it's ridiculous. We don't live in the now. We're living in the Clemson was good last year. They're not good right now. They could not score in a monkey whorehouse with a bag of bananas. They couldn't do it. They could not do it.
I'm trying to break that down. A monkey whorehouse with a bag of bananas.
Yes.
The ACC is they're struggling. There's no question. North Carolina beaten again, right? USC got smoked by Oregon State, and I saw this note. It's the first time that Oregon State's won at the Coliseum since 1960. That's 61 years ago.
Yeah, USC sucks. I mean, I watched that game. Their offense isn't very good. They're not very good. And, they rallied a little bit towards the end, but it was a foregone conclusion at that point. So, I was interested in them because of the Texas ties they had. A lot of players from Texas on that roster now. And they got, some transfers from UT as well. And then got Graham Harrell at OC. And, there's a team to pay attention to. And they're not worth paying attention to, quite frankly. I mean, that's just a let's get to our next head coach kind of thing right now. And then going back to, a couple minutes ago, Wisconsin and Notre Dame, Graham Mertz and those NIL deals, man. He signed a big one before the season, and I saw a lot of people commenting after the fact. And to be fair, businesses invest in things all the time that don't pan out and don't, end up maximizing their investment. But that's a risky run in business. But at the same time, that's what's going to happen with some of these things is people are going to make NIL deals and think like, oh, this is going to be, whatever. And it's not going to always work out. And for Graham Mertz and anybody who certainly signed up to have his name, promoting their products, I don't know that you sold very much after Saturday.
I'm trying Rattler, to think. De'Ara King, and now Rattler can still have, he's unbeaten, but Rattler, De'Ara King, Mertz, a couple of others.
King and Milton, Mackenzie Milton, founded a company for NIL, and I think that's going to be more profitable for them down the line as former college athletes than it will be for them now, which is great and good for them. But I can't think of somebody right now, a college athlete. DJ Uiagalelei is Dr. Pepper,
right? Yeah, and Clemson's they're headed for what is normal. They get to kind of be with the rest of the pack, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's funny, though. Iowa State loses their second game, and it's a down-to-the-wire, failed onside kick, and they just fall out of the top 25. They lost to Iowa and now a top 25 Baylor team, and it's just like, see you guys later. But Clemson, they'll give them another 2 losses before they finally put them at like 24. You know what I mean? It's just crazy how that works, and it's so obvious how it works.
Clemson lost to a team that is 23rd in one poll, unranked in another. Iowa State lost to Iowa, ranked in the top 5 in both polls, and now a top 25 Baylor team. It's kind of
on the very last, literally the last play of the game, multiple times. I mean, 2 onside kicks, a 2-point convert. They were as in the game as you can possibly be at the end of a game without winning the game. I mean, and doing it multiple times, but. The polls are funny in how some teams get a lot more leeway than others, and Clemson obviously gets a little bit of leeway. And it doesn't. The thing is like if they were just missing one person, and how they used to Jeff Long and his BS reasons for the playoff in the early days, whether it was game control or. Then all of a sudden time zones, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh well, now injuries matter if they're particularly notable injuries. Like they threw out so much BS in those rankings in the early days to try to make it fit their format that they wanted. But it'd be one thing if you were Clemson and like, hey, your starting quarterback's out, and they would give you the benefit of the doubt on that. And they do have some injuries, but it's not as though like you're expecting them to turn the corner and flip that switch right now. Like the way they're playing, that's not like. Normally you would think, okay, yeah, they're going to flip the switch and turn it on after a loss, but I don't really see that with this team. I don't see them turning it on all of a sudden and just going on some great run. So that'll be interesting to follow. Definitely strange territory for Dabo based on the last few years.
Well, is their offensive line going to get – that's their biggest issue.
Yeah.
Their biggest issue is their offensive line is not very good. It's very inexperienced. And is their line going to get good during the season? We don't see it happen very often. Usually it takes the offseason to figure out and plug your holes because if not –
At that position,
particularly.
But how did Clemson end up without an offensive line?
Well, it's
got too star crazy with all the skill people?
I think it's also the transfer portal. You lose you lose a guy who you don't think is going to start for you until his redshirt junior year, and that, like, normally you think, well, that's not a big deal. We'll just get another guy. And maybe that guy wasn't going to the NFL like half of the guys on Clemson do, but that guy was still going to be better for you than the one who's in there now. I think we're starting to see in a lot of cases, and if you look up and down the top 25, I think you're starting to see the real world effects of a couple years of the transfer portal now, and that there are, I think, people go where they can start. And does that mean they're on an offensive line also of 4 other good guys? No, they might be the best one on it. And so the depth is gone, and you're kind of stuck with what you are. I think that's part of it, and some of it might just be sometimes you have bad talent evaluation.
I'm going to say perhaps the best win of the weekend. Some are saying NC State on the chat room or also the text line. Some are saying even Baylor's win against Iowa State. Now, you want to think about this with Baylor. Yeah, and that's who we cover for the most part. But as all of you know, whoever's watching or listening to us, we've gone from coast to coast now. And they've lost a coach because of a scandal. They've had an interim coach. They had a new coach who was there 3 years, including 1-11 and went 11-3, went to the Sugar Bowl. Played for the Big 12 title. They lose him. They go 2-7, and now here they are 4-0. Now, again, there's going to be 3 to 4 games this year that are like Iowa State where they could either win or lose them. And the difference between going 7-6 or 9-3 or whatever in between. But they are resilient as hell. They really are, considering quite a bit of what goes on and what has gone on really the last 5 years. It's pretty impressive if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to show you that if there's ever a vacancy again, it's a place that you can come in and win. It's not a matter of like, hey, there was one guy that was good there and that was it. I mean, you did have that question when, of course, there was Grant Taft back in the day, but Browse was a totally different animal in terms of success and how much of it happened, so quickly and in such a short amount of time. But afterwards, you did wonder, like, hey, is anybody else going to be able to do this? And Jim Grove didn't count because he had all of Art's staff, for an entire year. But then Matt Rule proved, like, yeah, no, you can. And then Dave Aranda's now come in and proven, like, hey, yeah, you can keep this thing going. Now, to what extent the rest of the year, we'll see. That was almost a loss on Saturday. But instead, it was a massive win. So, yeah, I think it just goes to show you that there's the pieces here for whoever is a good enough football coach to come in and win football games, no matter what you think about the size of Waco or their spot in the Big 12 or what. You can come here and win football games. Yeah. It's proven. It's been proven multiple times now.
They have good leadership by 3 different. Now Aranda still has work to do.
Yeah. I'm not saying the jury's done with him. But
you're in the middle of a fertile recruiting area, even with other big boys around you, and it is proven. And their commitment is very intense. To it.
I think the best win in the Big 12 this past weekend, though. I mean, yeah, Texas looked really good against Texas Tech. TCU falling to SMU. Obviously, can't count SMU as the best win in the Big 12, but what a win for the Ponies there. I think it was Oklahoma State over K-State. Oklahoma State, their defense is nasty. Spencer Sanders had a great game. They finally got some guys back at wide receiver that made a massive difference. Jalen Warren's turned it on at running back. They still have a couple question marks, but that was Sanders' best game since the bowl game last year, which we know was a great game for him. I mean, threw for 350, nearly 400 yards, didn't make a ton of turnovers. Between Jalen Warren, that defense, and maybe a hot-handed Spencer Sanders, just in time for Baylor to head up to Stillwater, but I had somebody from Oklahoma State last week DM me and say, hey, man, you're being a little hard on the Cowboys.
He was on that one.
Yeah, and I told him, I was like, that's fair. Like, not mentioning that they had this injury or that injury because we can't get super detailed all the time, but that does matter and comes into play, obviously. And so they get a guy or two back, and you see a difference. And, I think Oklahoma State is a team that definitely impressed me this past weekend.
I'll bring it back to Baylor for a second. They have leadership. That's what matters. So when the coach changes and the leadership up top doesn't. So Mack Rhodes is here. Linda Livingstone is here. The president and the AD matter. I know so many people will tell me that it doesn't. It's just about the coach. But
if they're on the same page.
Yeah, if they're on the same, like the president having an institutional flow chart that works. And Baylor has that now. And they had it a little bit when they had Coach Browse and Ian McCall. Ian McCall did a lot of things for fundraising. That was the first time that they'd ever really invested in facilities. Now they're not stopping doing that. They understand how it works, is to invest in the other things. So you can come, somebody can leave. Matt Rule can leave, and you can get somebody who can come in here and win, because it's not like he has to do what Art Briles did where, look, and let's take all the scandal out of it. The first thing Art Briles did was come in and say on his first day, I want to see a stadium on campus. And half of us in that room went, I want to see a unicorn. You know, like, what do you want? It's not going to happen. And then it did.
But he brought the unicorn. He brought RG3, which eventually led to that. All right, there's so much going on with the chat room and also the text line. Let's read some text when we come back, and also your chat. The line is open to talk and look back at the college football weekend, 254-339-1122.